Welcome to Career Tools. This week, getting ready to get promoted. Chapter 6, the 150% rule. Here we go. Okay, Wendy, we've been talking about helping people get promoted. They ask about it all the time, how to get promoted, and we usually just say get results and come back to us when you have, because if you don't get past that one, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter. Everybody thinks it's a game, but results are the 900-pound gorilla in the room. That said, for those people who can get good results, we still set a pretty tough standard after that. You got to do everything your job expects you to do, and you got to do some of your boss's job too.
Mean, aren't we? Not every company will be that tough. Not everybody works to this standard.
The best companies do.
Yeah, of course, because that's how they get good people and keep them and make sure that they're doing a good job. But set your goal high, and you'll be, if you can achieve it, or even if you can get halfway there, you'll be way ahead of everybody else in your company if they don't set this kind of standard.
Good. So explain the 150% rule at a high level.
So the 150% rule means you have to be able to do 100% of your job to the highest performance standard. So you have to be able to do every single task and achieve every goal that's set for you in a year, and you have to achieve it as if you were getting an A for everything, and then you have to be able to do 50% of your boss's job too.
It's not just able to do it, but that you in fact prove that you did do it. Your results show you did everything you were supposed to do in your job. You did it to an A level, and then additionally, you're suggesting that they also have to have proven that they can do 50% of their boss's job.
Yeah. And people say that's really hard, but when you're doing your boss's job, his job is twice as hard as yours. So this is only 1.5 times as hard. So you have to be able to work at a higher level in order to do that job well. And so you're just starting early. Instead of being able to do your job and getting your performance to the A standard and then moving into your boss's job and suddenly finding you're a D or an F student, instead, if you've done 50% of your boss's job, you know how to do that stuff, then at least you're at a C average when you move into that job to start with.
Good. What's the rest of the outline?
You can't make your manager delegate to you. Look for visibility and coach yourself.
Yeah, we just talked about coach yourself recently in
exactly
Career Tools Cast. Okay, good enough. Okay, if you want to get promoted, and folks, it's perfectly fine if you don't. The only way you can, not the only way, the most significant way you can improve your chances for promotion, for more responsibility and therefore more pay and more authority and hopefully more humility, you're going to have to do more. You can't simply expect to do your job and then be given more without having shown I can actually do more. And so what we suggest with our 150% rule is learning to do more now before you have the additional responsibilities will make it much easier for people to believe that you'll actually be able to do more later when you actually have those responsibilities. And doing more now while having to manage the priorities of your job and more of your job, and then also being able to improve your productivity because productivity standards are higher every level you go up. That's all part of the process of proving and earning the right to take the next step, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about it as school, when you move from the 5th to the 6th grade, you don't know any 6th grade stuff, but at the end of the year, you do. You know everything. And when you look back from the end of the 6th to the end of the 5th, you can see the growth. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at school, but it doesn't matter if the first semester you fail at everything as being a 6th grader. Whereas if you move that way as a boss, if you move from your individual contributor level to a first line manager and you fail at everything for the first semester, which is a quarter, about roughly, people are going to start questioning whether they made the right move in promoting you.
Yeah.
So you've got to at least have some idea of what 6th grade is going to be like and be able to do some of that work in order to not fail in your first semester.
Yeah. So you've got to meet the high standards for your own role. Then you need to find an extra hour a week to look at your boss's job. The way I like to say this is, if you're taking all of your time to do your job now, guys, you won't have time. You haven't learned the productivity and efficiencies necessary to increase your productivity for the company when you're at a much more burdened level. And the burden is significantly more. It's 50, 75, 100% more, depending upon how you slice it, on what your skills are versus what the new skills will be. And if you can't figure out how to do let's assume you're working 40 hours a week, if you can't figure out how to do that 40 hours in 35, what makes you think you can do a job that the day you step into it would essentially be equivalent of 70 or 80 hours of your work?
Exactly.
How are you going to be able to do that?
Yeah.
So you take an hour and you look at your boss's role and you analyze what are the most important parts of his or her role. What does he do that only he can do? And what does he do that you don't do? And probably you don't know what you don't know. And you could say, oh, she does budget, but you have no clue what doing budget means. And it's okay, but it's not okay to not know that and to expect somebody to say, yeah, we're going to give you budget responsibility. Sure. Yeah. You does it. You never spend any time trying to figure out how to do it. You never ask your boss to help in any way. And yet you think we should give you that responsibility. It just doesn't happen in the top companies in the world.
Well, we all say when we're not doing the job, how hard can that be? Till you start trying it. Yeah. And actually, budgeting is hard. And so is all the other things that your boss is doing. And if your boss has been in that role for a long time or a reasonable length of time, they're making it look easy because they've had the experience and they've had the practice, and it allows them to make it look easy.
It's not just that they're making it look easy. They're not talking about it. Again, you don't know what you don't know. And telling yourself, oh, how hard can it be, is absolutely the bass-backwards approach. It must be hard. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, and we'd be paying your boss a lot less.
Exactly. So we said at the beginning of this series that it's an 18-month or more campaign, and this is one of the reasons why, because you can't learn your boss's job or even 50% of your boss's job overnight. And Drucker says that we shouldn't have more than two priorities. So doing your job and learning somebody else's, that's as much as you can manage at one time.
I'm afraid you just made a lot of people think, why would I read Drucker now? That clearly means Drucker doesn't know what he's talking about. Trust me, folks. Most people think their job has 17 priorities, but they end up only working on 2 of them. He was talking about our abilities to do things well, not how many tasks your job asks you to do.
Yes, it's not how many balls do you have in the air, it's how many don't drop to the floor.
Yeah. Or how many you do exceptionally well. So what we're suggesting is you need to start learning about your boss's job. Pick one thing that your boss does in support of her priorities, a thing that you don't currently do, and start learning that. And then the next, and then the next, and so on. And if you're thinking that you're going to have an easy quarter, you feel like you're in good shape for the year, you're on track, everything should be fine, but you want to get promoted, there shouldn't be an easy quarter in there. And you might say, gee, you're making it sound hard. Sure. We want the company to promote you because you've earned it. And when you get promoted, we want you to do well once you get promoted. And the problem with so many managers, particularly first-line managers who have been individual contributors, is they want the promotion. They earn the promotion based on results. They're not at a truly high-performing company where there are other criteria applied. You're the best salesperson, so we promote you, but you're not ready to do the job, and you fail. Well, it's going to be really hard for you to get back on the horse. And unfortunately, not a lot of companies have a policy where, you can fail and go back down and then come back up whenever you want. Mm-hmm. They're not going to ladle that joy on you again, most likely. We could argue that that's not the best way to be. We would, but it doesn't matter. Reality says you won't get that job again.
Yeah. And it can be scary, if you've done it and failed, then getting back is, then you've got even more pressure. So It's better to do it right first time.
Okay. Now you said we can't make our managers delegate to us.
Yeah. So the best scenario, if you wanted to be promoted, if we could create the ideal company for you, is one, they would have the 150% standard, and secondly, your manager would be following our guidance and getting you ready for promotion and delegating all the important parts of his job to you so that you got the chance to learn them, and he gives you some air cover when you make mistakes and you get some things under your belt so that you're ready to be promoted. But not every manager does that. Lots of people have a tough time letting go of jobs. Not that I would be one of them.
Yep.
Um,
And folks, you can laugh at Wendy if you want, but at least she knows it. Whereas a lot of us talk ourselves out of the reason, and we don't blame ourselves for holding on to tasks. We blame the task. We blame the lack of our subordinates' ability at their level. And so it's not our fault, because even an idiot wouldn't delegate this, when in fact you're wrong. Failure to delegate is never a task problem. It's never a direct problem. It's a manager problem. Because you can delegate, you're just afraid of what happens.
it's funny how many emotional problems there are in work.
The problem is it's not funny at all.
Yeah, you're right.
I thought things were either tragedy or comedies, right? So it's not a comedy. It's a tragedy.
That's true. So, I mean, if your manager isn't willing or doesn't seem willing to delegate, you can offer to take certain meetings or responsibilities off his plate. If there's something you can see that's discreet and is easy for you to take in a kind of a whole way, that you can say, I know what the reporting requirements are. It's not connected to anything else, or if it is, it's connected in a way that allows me to just take this piece. Then you can go you can go to your boss and say, hey, I want to be promoted, and I can see that this is an important part of the manager's job at this company, and I would like to take that responsibility from you and learn how to do that. And it's not you can't go up to them and say, hey, I just want to make your job easier, because that's kind of disingenuous. Yep. And you can be honest. If you're not, there's no reason not to be honest. I'm ambitious. I want more. I believe I'm capable of more, and I want to deliver it. There's no bad reason for saying that.
Yeah, it's funny. People, I know when you said I'm ambitious, there were people who cringe a little bit. So, ooh, there's a tinge of negativity. Actually, folks, your company is ambitious. It has ambitions to grow. It wants to grow. Okay? If the market's growing at 5% per year, your company better grow at 5% per year. Otherwise, your company is shrinking relative to its competitors. The pie is getting bigger, despite some people's predilections believing that everything is a zero-sum game. And as long as you see things as a pie charts never imply that things get bigger. There's always just 100%. Well, if the market doubles, right, you better double. If you only grow by 50% when the market doubles, you're lagging behind. And you're going to be a victim of race, don't chase, unfortunately. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's a Manager Tools cast. So ambition is not a problem. Your company has ambitions. If no one in the company has ambitions, but the CEO says the company has ambitions, wants to grow, again, substitute ambition for want to grow, or want to grow for ambition. If the CEO wants, or the chairman of the board, or the COO wants the company to grow, and nobody in the company wants to grow, the company won't grow. So don't apologize for being ambitious. Recognize you're simply keeping up. And if you want to grow faster than the market, meaning the people around you, that's good, because your company wants that too. So it's okay to be ambitious. You don't have to call it ambitious. You can say, I want to grow. I want to serve more. I want to help more people. I want more people to benefit from what I think is a good way of leading and caring for people and achieving results. And I believe I can make a difference, a positive difference. I'm not suggesting anyone else can't. And I also want to test myself personally. I want to be challenged. I find I do best when I'm challenged. That's all part of, quote, ambition, unquote. And that's all reasonable. Not just reasonable, it's professional. It's appropriate, and it's to be lauded. It's to be appreciated. It's not to be sniggered at.
So we've asked our boss for responsible. We've told our boss that there's a certain responsibilities that you're willing to take from him, and then one of three things will happen.
Exactly.
Either he won't delegate it to you, he won't give it to you, he'll say, no, I'm going to keep that job, or I'm going to keep that meeting, or he'll give you something else that you didn't want, or you get what you want. But getting what you want's good. That's the easy one. If he won't give you something, or if she feels like, no, only I can do those things, then you can't.
Language, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
You can't force it, right?
You can't force it. You can't say, you have to give that to me. If you are getting results and you know your performance is an A-rated performance, however your company rates that, the problem is not you and whether or not you can do the job. The problem is the manager and them not wanting to let it go. So you'll have to just find different ways to get that experience with those responsibilities. Perhaps you can go on a project team or a cross-functional team or some other project, or you can do it outside of work. It's harder for you, but there's still just brainstorm a bit. There's still opportunities to learn those responsibilities.
Yep. Good. Now, there are the two possibilities. One, she delegates something you don't want. I assume you're going to tell us, be quiet about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't say, no, that's not the one I wanted.
Yeah, because it's really all about you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It doesn't matter because you'll still learn something. If it's one of the things that your boss does that you don't do, then you'll still learn something, even if it is creating Excel spreadsheets and charts. At least you'll know what the numbers are and how your boss is looking at those. And say thank you and do the task to the best of your ability, because doing tasks well and with grace is how you get more. If I were the manager and somebody said to me, is there something I can do to help? Well, I would give them something small that I was fairly confident they could do, or I was fairly confident that it wouldn't matter. And then if they did that well, then I might think about the thing that they asked for. That's probably all your manager's doing. Baby steps.
Right. Good.
And if you're delegated the task you wanted, congratulations.
Yeah.
Lucky you. Yeah, just do that to the best of your ability.
And there's a subtext here, guys. If you do your job well and you work for a boss that won't trust you, and you ask repeatedly in a professional way as best you can, and you're repeatedly told no, suddenly the most important career tools cast is yet again
building a network
with other people in form of a network so that you can go somewhere else. And that's one of the reasons why we encourage managers to delegate. If anything, the biggest surprise in delegation is managers thinking somebody can't do it well and discovering they're fine. And the manager discovering, wow, I really enjoy not having to do that anymore. And somehow the direct really enjoys doing it. And your boss may not be that person. And we don't know who your boss is, and we don't recommend you give your boss feedback, and you don't have a lot of leverage. So if repeated asking fails, then maybe you need to find another boss. You're welcome to stay, but your ability probably to get the job, get promoted, is going to be harder. Yeah. And we wish that weren't so, but you might as well call career tools and manager tools reality tools as well. It's not fantasy tools. Last two things, simpler ones, but you said look for visibility.
Yeah, so all other things being equal, if you were given the task,
which
they never are.
Right,
Yeah.
Right? That's one of manager tools rules. Yeah, all things being equal, which they never are, meaning, guys, all things being equal is a way to point out a uniqueness of a certain characteristic of a problem, a component of a problem, a piece of a system. And saying all things being equal, this piece is really important for this reason. But no system has a bunch of equal parts. No analysis shows there are 5 things and they're all equally 20%, unless it's an abstract analysis. So keep in mind, all of the things are never equal. But if you're looking at things, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm stealing your thunder here, Wendy. If you're looking for things, look for things that will give you visibility. Now, if there are 5 things you can choose, and one of them gives you the most visibility, but it's the thing your boss is least likely to give you, don't start there, because that violates the rule of all those things being equal. Equality means both you can do them and your boss is willing to give them up. Right? And probably if you think it's going to give you more visibility, your boss thinks visibility, if there's risk associated with it, because she hasn't delegated to you, that probably means she believes there's some risk associated with it. Visibility also means risk in the form of senior risk, right? People knowing that somebody failed.
Yeah. And so if you had 5 equal things and you could do them all equally well and you were given the choice, none of those things are going to happen. But if that in this little perfect world were true, then choose the thing that gives you more visibility, because we constantly, we've just gone back to it, build a network. We constantly say to you, have allies in the wider organization, have people you know in different departments. And one of the ways you build up the number and the quality of your allies, and the quality is dependent on how well they know your work and how well you've worked with them, one way you do that is doing jobs where you get increased visibility from the wider organization. So if you're given the choice between two things and you can do them equally well, choose the one that gives you the most access to people in the other parts of the organization.
Good. And then lastly, we recommended coaching yourself. Anybody can get better at anything.
Yep.
If you measure your effort and you work at getting better, right?
Yeah.
And that's what our coaching model, using it to coach yourself, basically says. Decide what your goal is going to be and measure your progress day in, day out, week in, week out. And, if you ask yourself now, how well do you communicate? How well do you manage your time and priorities? How well do you influence others? And by the way, this is where your network can come in handy. When you see someone in your network who does those things better than you, learn from them. I wish more people would understand that admitting your weakness is often a sign of strength, and saying to one of your friends, gosh, you're so much better at that than me. Most people feel flattered enough and then get arrogant enough to say, well, here's what I do. And they sort of load it over you. And why wouldn't you want to learn? Test a little bit, make a little, sell a little. And look, if you decide that you're not as good at influencing other people, or that you're not as good at negotiating, or you're not as good at delivering a presentation, these are things you can develop in yourself. And you could actually tell your boss, look, I'm actually working on that. I wouldn't mind walking by one of my direct desks and find out that they're working on a skill. They're saying, I know you do budgeting, and I've asked a couple times about budgeting. I understand, boss, that you don't want to trust me with it, but I figured I could learn. And so there's a software package that the company uses, and there's an online tutorial for it. So I thought I'd learn. Now, remember, we said you had to do 100% of your existing job, so it's not like you can let everything slide while you learn budgeting for the next level. But if you can keep hitting your numbers and spend time doing that, that'll show your boss something. And if your boss still chooses not to delegate to you, go back to the rule we said earlier, which is engage your network. You can still work on those areas even if your boss is not delegating to you. Good, better, best. Never let me rest until my good is better and my better best. Yeah. And didn't we also talk about, we talked about volunteering, right? For skills, for developmental skills outside of work as well.
Outside of work and outside of the normal kind of work practices, exactly, outside of your role. And there's a bunch of universal skills. Everybody needs to be able to present. Everybody needs to be able to manage a project. And so there's plenty of opportunities to do those things, even if your boss isn't delegating to you. So start there. I
don't want to put my cart in front of the horse, but there's another thing everybody needs to learn how to do. That's how to interview.
Yeah.
I joke about the first three. I don't joke about it, but it rolls off our tongue so easily here. But interviewing is something else.
Yeah, and something that a lot of people aren't very good at.
Yeah, how hard would it be? I mean, you and I probably take this for granted, Wendy, in terms of assuming, not assuming it about ourselves, but we're assuming that people out in the field, people who are listening now, would say to themselves, if they heard their bosses, yeah, we're probably going to hire somebody. You pop your head in it and you say, look, I'd love to have a chance to interview. If it would help you to have an interviewer, I'll be happy to interview.
Yeah.
If you're smart, you'll have a license and you'll use the interview creation tool, and you'll give the best interview of any of your bosses or his or her directs, including your boss's interview, because you'll be well prepared.
Yeah, and if you're low level, just ask to sit in and just and look at listen to the questions and the answers, and then, find out what your boss thought afterwards and say, okay, well, I didn't think he was employable or I didn't think we should offer him for these reasons, and see what your boss says and see if you can get close to those answers. Yep. That's one way to learn.
Good. Okay, wrap us up.
Okay, so the 4 steps are 100% of your job to the A standard and 50% of your bosses. You can't make your manager delegate to you, but that doesn't mean that you can't find opportunities to learn. Look for visibility and coach yourself.
Yep. That 150% we know is a high standard, guys. We know that if you meet it, it'll be a walk compared to everybody else who gets that promotion that you wanted. You'll be ready. And even if your boss doesn't totally support what you're doing, with this standard in mind and these steps in mind, you'll get a lot closer than if you didn't know it. And that's what we're trying to help you do. Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
That's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed the manager tools idea of the 150% rule combined with getting promoted. We'll have more to say on getting promoted in the days, months, and years ahead.